Hey, I'm Robert Belgrave, and you're watching Pax8 Live.
We want to help you take your MSP business to the next level.
We have just expanded the amount of resources that you as partners have through Pax8.
Real security is about how you manage the losses, how you take the punches, how well you detect, how well you respond.
This is where we'll be bringing you content that you want to see every week to help you grow your business.
And I think the real winners here are the managed service providers.
Who is this?
I'm Chief Cuteness Officer.
My advice is know what you're selling and know whether it's making you money.
I ended up living in Korea for 4 years.
I was wondering when we were going to talk about the elephant in the room.
But thanks, Dad.
Let's talk about risk assessment. So there's all kinds of ways to respond to risk.
Man, it's great to see you, Dom.
If you're really interested in just the nerdy bits of home security, definitely check out those resources. That was a huge thunder.
Are you guys excited? Are you ready to start beyond?
I think folks are really excited about what they can do with their customers and how they can help grow their business.
It's a massive opportunity for all of you.
Cheers to the channel community.
Keep finding ways that we're helping partners, finding either, balance in their life or focus or purpose.
Practices that are going to help improve your project management skills or your finances.
We're here to talk about setting long-term goals and then how to achieve them.
Increasing your quality, therefore becoming the best place in town to work.
Welcome to Academy Live.
Welcome back to Academy Live. We've all heard the expression that the hardest job is finding a job. So if you or someone you know is looking for a job this year, this episode is for you. This episode will also be really helpful if you're someone that's in a manager position, you're looking to make a great hire. We're going to discuss all the things that you might need to consider. The new year is often when companies are posting positions. There's a lot more time for hiring and training than there is at the end of the year. I know that's something my brother is currently going through right now. No hits in November and then now in December and nothing in December and January, everything's posted. So we are really excited. We're going to have a partner to come talk about us with hiring, and it's going to be our friend Zac King from Green Bean IT. We're also going to be hearing from Pax8's Mark McCauley on what Pax8 looks for when it comes to new hires. But before I'm joined by Chris, let's check out the latest sales pitch.
Play ball!
In baseball, when you hit the ball, you run as fast as you can to reach the base safely. In sales, you want to ensure you touch all the bases accurately, but speed doesn't really apply. Why is that? So let me ask, does your IT services company get a lead and then race to the proposal? One of Yogi Berra's quotes, "We're lost, but we're making great time." Who cares how many proposals you delivered? How many did you win? Did you propose to people that don't have a problem? You answered RFP? Their agreement is ending and they're shopping? Most MSPs get a prospect, ask them a few questions, they get all excited that they have a potential new client, then they speed through the sales cycle, race to that proposal, they skip steps, and they don't build a know, like, and trust relationship. Doing this leads to having a hope and wish plan, not a real sales funnel. The opportunity is not real. It's like thinking you hit a home run when you didn't even hit the ball. That's crazy. So let's touch all the bases. 1, did you uncover or discover 2 to 3 real business problems that they are experiencing? 2, the impact that those problems are having on their business. 3, did you find out where they want things to be and what positive outcomes that they desire? 4, did you get confirmation from all the stakeholders that these problems are real, that they have an immediate timeline to fix them, and they have a budget for them? Get answers to those questions before racing to the proposal. Also, go to Pax8 Academy. There's a free on-demand course called Sales Techniques for Emerging Service Providers that will cover these things around qualifying and not racing to the proposal and understanding what your buyer prospect is thinking about. This will help you not only not race to the proposal, but help you get to the finish line with a better chance of winning the race.
Well, thank you as always to Keith. I love those sales pitch videos because it really just gets a little nugget to really think about. Chris, is that something that you're seeing a lot with partners, or that you've seen from your own time at an MSP where you're rushing to get the proposal? Is that something that often happens, or not too much?
Interesting how much that resonates. That message sits a little too close to home, if you will, if I can use that term. But yeah, I love these. To me, it's like the 2020 hindsight is kind of what it feels like watching these. And I look back at my own experience and thinking how many times I do exactly that, just round the bases and not even really know. I probably ran to third first, to be honest with you, running the bases the wrong direction. And it really hit me too that, one of the things that exacerbated that was when the prospect showed that sense of urgency, instead of me looking at it like a red flag and kind of wait, okay, well, hold on, maybe there's something wrong here. It was always just that excitement. Oh, good, they're ready to sign. Let's do that. And you skip steps. And when you skip steps, you misstep. So, and like you talked about the on-demand course and things like that. I'm sure a lot of content comes around from sales regarding that. Right, Bessie?
Yeah, there's a lot of, I know you're breaking up a little bit, Chris, but it looks like you're back now. But there is a lot of on-demand content. If you go into academy.pax8.com, you can search by role and you can look at all the content we have for people in sales. And that on-demand course, I think it's sales techniques for emerging salespeople. That's something like that. Highly recommend taking a look at that. Keith and Jeremy and our whole team at the Sales Enablement for Pax8 Academy put together these amazing courses to help you with your sales. So we know that's an area that many MSPs struggle with sometimes. And don't be worried. We have a lot of things to support you with and a lot of education. But with that, I think it's time to bring on Zac King from Green Bean IT. Hi, Zac. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Hello.
Welcome
Zac,
back.
Will you share with us a humble brag? Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your business. We want to hear it all.
Well, my claim to fame is that I made Chris Kaiser who he is today. If I were to speak for him, he would tell me that I am his source of inspiration. So
I don't know if I'd claim that, Zac. Be careful. That's not claim-worthy.
I mean, Chris, we talked about this beforehand. Okay, I told you the check's in the mail. Like we'll get there. No, I'm Zac with Green Bean IT. We are based in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We are an MSP. I've been doing IT stuff for over 20 years, longer than some people have been alive, which is kind of scary. And love what I do. If I won the lottery, I would still do this in some form or fashion. I would just be doing it from a tropical island where, they've got good Wi-Fi. And so I've got 3 wonderful kids. And my 10-year-old daughter said I had to give a shout out to her. So Ruthie, this is your shout out.
What a good dad. Well played.
She's going to watch the YouTube just to find that part. So
yeah, just fast forward to that. The only way she'll acknowledge dad on social media. Hey, Zac, one of the things that we love to do here is we have our quote of the week. We've asked you to prep one, so I'm going to ask you to bring that up on the screen and ask you to read us the quote and tell us why this is relevant for you.
Yeah, so this is Seek First to Understand, Then to Be Understood by Stephen Covey. His book is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I don't know how long ago this came out, but I feel like the longer that we go, the more it's relevant, because no one nowadays especially wants to wait to say something before they've got all the facts. Something happens in the media and you get this much information and then bam, you have everybody giving 1,000 opinions, right? In the NFL, they call them armchair quarterbacks, right? Or Monday morning quarterbacks. It's the people who always want to question after the fact or something else there. And it's so important in life and in business, as I have been burned so many times by assuming I knew more than what I did and acting on that, or saying something or correcting someone based on that. And I didn't have all the facts. And then I looked dumb, open mouth, insert foot, because I violated this one thing. And so, when it comes to hiring or anything, that you're doing, it is so important to make sure that first you're seeking to understand all of the facts involved, all of the criteria, especially with that sales video, right? Understanding, why are they rushing? Why are they wanting to move so fast? Why are they leaving their current provider? Putting those things together gives you a cohesive picture. Then you can act on that. But if you first seek for others to understand you before you've understood, you just end up wasting a bunch of time and you just look like an arrogant jerk. And I know if it's me, I try not to look that way if I can. And so that's why that quote has sort of stuck with me for so long.
It resonates. It makes so much sense. And talk about the sales pitch, how many times that play in sales or hiring and getting people that are interested in listening just so they can say their thing. The people that they're only listening to know what they can say when they can say it, not really to understand. And that's a big impact. Bessie, what do you got for Zac?
Yeah, I think that makes so much sense. And I do think you can apply it to so many realms. I love that quote. And it's not one that I really have thought of or comes to mind too much, but it is really does resonate. I know I was on a sales call today with Pax8 salespeople, and the call was ended by saying how important it is to say, I don't know, when you don't know something, and not just making something up. And I think that really resonated with me with what you were saying just now about, it's okay. We're not machines. We don't know everything. We sometimes have to research and figure it out. So.
Well, Zac, I want to ask you, and let's talk a little bit. Let's get into a conversation. Hiring. Over the years of your business, I know you've done everything else perfectly. Has this ever been an issue in your own business of hiring people?
I wish I could say that after 20 years, it's one of those things that we've just got nailed and we're doing great and have no problems. And the reality is I'm discovering after each and every hire and each and every interview new things. And I'm like, okay, I need to pay attention to that. And it's, post-COVID, it's obviously been a little bit different, but there are things that I have learned doing it the wrong way. And there are things that I have learned where the folks that ended up being long-term players on our team, I learned some things from them that I was able to glean from my interview with them and try to look for that the next time that I was interviewing someone. And so, yeah, there's new struggles every day with hiring, especially in the technology space.
You're not alone. Oh, if that makes you feel any better, that happens a lot. We talk about that a lot in the peer groups, and it's a challenge. And it's a lot of different facets of it.
Definitely. I would say, I'm curious, Zac, what What are some of those challenges that you're facing? Is it more finding even candidates to apply, or is it selecting the right candidate? Where are we kind of starting from with that you were talking about?
Yeah, I think for us in the MSP space and in technology, knowing where we're coming from and why we're hiring is a big part of that, because sometimes we get so busy working in the business, we're not working on it. And then we get that new client or we get that big project, and then we have to hire. Now we're hiring under duress, right? We're trying to find somebody quick because, oh my gosh, I gotta fulfill this order. I have to do this. Then we end up sacrificing processes, procedures, due diligence just to get a body in there. And then it all sort of goes downhill for there. So I think it starts with us saying, do I even know who I'm looking for, why I'm looking? One of the things that we've started to do here is almost just always be in a hiring process for when the right person comes along. Because for us, when the right person comes along, we try to grab them, because we typically have two big problems: finding good people and finding more business. And the challenge for us has been harder in finding good people than it is finding more business. So if I find that right person, I want to grab them. And nearly every single time, the business has shown up afterwards because the right person was already there. And so, I think that when we understand who we're looking for or what we're looking for, it helps that hiring process to be so much more successful. And part of that for us is trying to be as prepared ahead of time and not have to try to hire in the moment when we need it, because we tend to not make the best kind of decisions under that kind of stress and pressure.
How important?
I want to share one story, Chris, because I'm building a new course. I'm not going to say who in Academy was telling me this story, but building a new course on your first hire. And she was telling me the story about how she was under such duress. She walked into Best Buy and hired some guy off just on the spot because she needed help, and just was like, I'm in the Best Buy and you seem like you know what you're doing and you can come work for me. Like, no, hadn't vetted him, didn't talk to her team about the finances, making sure they could pay them, just was like, we need you and we need you now. So I just wanted to share that. Chris, what were you going to say?
I can't wait to hear, like, I got to go back and see how that ended up, because the first thing is, what could go wrong, right? But I look at Zach's face, tells it all right there. That's experience right there. Sheer terror. Well, the question I had for you, Zach, was how important are job descriptions then? And how much time do you put into developing those when you're looking for somebody?
Yeah, I think they're extremely important. I think the mistake that we sometimes make is that we focus on the what more so than the how sometimes. So we might say you need to have X, Y, and Z technical skills or some other things, rather than this position relies heavily on troubleshooting and out of the box thinking and critical thinking skills. And so if we're not setting someone up for success by really communicating to them what kind of skills that they actually need, that are not just, I have this cert, I know this particular technology, we're going to end up either hiring the wrong person, or we're going to have a person who has that set of technical skills but not the other skills needed for the job. And so really there's ways that you can do that. You can get feedback from your existing team. You can get feedback from folks at Pax8 to say, hey, if you were going to hire for somebody like this, what would you think about some of the skills that were needed for this? If you're in a peer group at Pax8, that's a great way to get some of that feedback as well, is just to ask other peers, hey, I'm trying to hire for this. Does anybody have a job description? Does anybody have something that I can start with there specifically? Because you're doing it from the perspective of, you know, that position well. No one else out there knows what you know. So you have to start with the assumption that they know nothing about what you do, your processes, how it works. And so when you start with that assumption, you can make it a whole lot easier, because you're really just trying to paint a picture that says these are the top things that are most important for this person to do, and not assume that they already know what to do and you're just sort of filling the blanks. You have to assume they don't know anything about technology, MSPs, and then start from there. The people who get it will fly through that process quickly, and the people who don't will probably ask questions that will tell you that they don't really know about the position that you're in. And so it's really important to make sure that Someone who doesn't know about your organization can read that job description and get a good understanding around what's required, what's needed. So that way those candidates are also able to understand it in the best way possible because they don't know anything about your business.
Yeah. Bessie, I want to throw you on the spot here a little bit, but Zac, I think you'll agree. I think that there is a component of selling your business to your prospects. There is a component that it was a hard lesson for me to kind of like, I have to promote my business to attract candidates and say why this is a great place to work here. So Bessie, putting yourself in the shoes of a candidate, you're probably the most recent jobs, what was your experience like in your application, and what drew you to apply for what you applied for based on the company selling themselves to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that knowing like the things that I would look for, I know this is going to just make Chris's heart sing, but like values, knowing what the values and the mission are of the company that you're applying for. He's like, oh, I've done my lesson. She knows what I'm thinking, but that's one thing is for sure is what are your values? How do you live those values? What are those behaviors associated with it? Is that something that you are seen not only in the interview process, but it's something that in the day-to-day life that you're going to have working at this company that you're going to be rewarded, and that you really see that everyone is working towards these things, these values are. That's one thing I definitely look for. And that has to do also with what's the culture. And so being able to, Zac, you mentioned ask what questions they ask you really help you know where they're at. If you were clear in your description, if they do not know what's going on, if they, it really does help as an interviewer to know if my interviewee is asking questions that were on the job description. Did they read it? Did they know it? That's my favorite part of doing an interview is just what is the interviewee going to ask, and what do they care about, and does it align with our values, and does it align with our culture? It's a great way to understand. But those are some things I'm thinking about. I know we're kind of moving into the interview part about hiring. So can you share with us, Zac, what are some interview questions that you ask candidates?
Sure. The approach that I like to take with interviewing is it's almost like you're dating, or you're trying to figure out, do I want to date this person, right? Because I will tell them, I'm trying to get inside of your head. I'm trying to understand how you think, how you process information. And so you wouldn't go on a first date and go, tell me how you order at restaurants. Do you pick from the left side of the menu first? Like, you're wanting to know things about their life and their story and their background. And sometimes that's what we tend to do is when we're going to these interviews, we don't treat it like a date or a relationship. We treat it like some sort of tactical thing, and we're not robots, right? You're not hiring some AI thing to come in. You're hiring a real human being who has thoughts and feelings and emotions and history and all of those things. And so when I'm going in, that's what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get inside their head and ask them questions that tell me how they think. And so sometimes one of the questions that I'll ask is, if they're not in technology, hey, why do you want to work in technology? Sometimes they'll say, I have a sibling, I have an uncle, a mentor, somebody who is in technology, and they've really inspired me, and I want to follow in their footsteps. Sometimes they say, oh, I like to sort of build computers at my house. I'm really trying to discover, how did they go from where they're at to where we are right now? And if I can follow their thought process, it might give me a clue as to how they think about problems or taking initiative or asking questions, right? Bessie, you mentioned earlier, like just admitting that you don't know. That's a great thing for a candidate to say is, I didn't know, so I went and asked someone else and they gave me some tips. That tells me that they're more likely to be the kind of person who's going to raise their hand in the job and say, I don't know, can someone help me out with this? Which is a huge thing that you want to be able to know.
Absolutely. And trying to uncover the right things. Questions with a purpose, I love, right? I'll try to make this quick. I got to share this story. It's one of my favorite things. 100 years ago, when I was a job seeker and I was applying, I had an opportunity at this job. I did this group interview with all these PhDs, and they asked me this question. Finding out later, they did animal testing, and that bothered some people. So they wanted to be sure that I didn't have an issue with animal testing. So the question they asked me was, how do you feel about animals? And I was in the right frame of mind, or wrong frame of mind, depending. I think the right frame of mind, right off the cuff, my answer was, and they asked me, how do I feel about animals? As I said, I think with the right sauce, they're great. And I think that nailed the interview for me in that instance. But again, moving on, the purpose-filled questions, asking things to try to uncover and build what's the likelihood of success in your environment. What are some other things you look for in candidates outside of the technical skills? What are things that people have done that have either steered you away? Like you said, people ask questions that kind of exclude them from being a good candidate, or things that have made people stand out to you?
Yeah, I think that kind of like what Bessie was talking about, when they have demonstrated that they read the job description at least once, when they went to our website to at least check out, hey, because I'll ask them, what do you think that we do? And they might say, I tried to understand it. It looks like you do this, this, and this. I'll go, yes, that's great. And here's sort of the other side of it. If they try to make up something, that's worse, because I can tell immediately they know nothing about what we actually do there. And so I'm looking for honesty, transparency, and just something that tells me, even if they say, you know what, I'm really nervous right now and I'm not sure how to answer that, I'll say, that's fine. Just take a second, compose yourself. This is not a pressure thing. You don't have to get the right answer. If you don't know, we can come back to it there. Because somebody who's going to tell me, hey, I'm a little nervous, or that's totally fine. I'm not, this is not like in a dark room with a spotlight on them and I'm trying to, waterboard them. This is like, hey, I'm just trying to get to know you, trying to get to understand some of these things. But really their level of honesty with where they're at and their demonstration of some level of work that they've already done or are willing to do to get to that next level is key, because especially someone coming from a different industry who wants to work in IT, their salary level, what they get, doesn't always translate over to our industry because they're starting from ground zero. So I have to try to explain that to them, to say, you're starting at the bottom. I need you to know that you're going to have to work your way up. And if they say, you know what, I'm willing to work my way up and I want to start at the bottom and learn, that's great. And so it's really been those interactions that I've had with positive candidates. The worst thing that somebody can do is lie. I have had people who lied about things that when I asked them about their resume, I always try to ask, tell me about this certification, tell me about this. One person lied and said, oh, you know what, I should have taken that off because I didn't actually get that certification. And I said, really? Tell me why. Maybe there was a life struggle or some challenge that they couldn't finish it. And this person said, no, I didn't need some stupid test to tell me that I know the difference between a Cat5 and an HDMI cable. So I just stopped it. Needless to say, that person's likelihood of getting hired went to zero. This was about 12 minutes into their interview, and I had to figure out, how do I give this person some dignity and at least give them 30 minutes of my time? And so candidates don't ever lie. The more honest that you can be, the more human, right, that you can connect with that person interviewing, the better chance that you have. And even if you are nervous, if you're excited, right, whatever that ranges most, and say, hey, I'm really excited to be here today. I really hope to understand more about this position. All of those things go a long way with doing it. Also asking good questions, right? The quote of first seeking to understand. If they say, I don't understand what you mean by that, can you help me understand a little bit more? Man, that goes so far with me, because it tells me they're genuinely taking an interest in what I'm saying, and they're not just listening to respond and to try to sound like the perfect candidate.
Yeah.
I know.
And you hear the things like, you hear the things like how you treat the waiter, give some indication how they treat the client, or, I'm mixing metaphors here, but I think you get the point. Bessie.
No, I agree. I'm going to just tail end onto that. It's when I used to coach students that were applying to college students that were applying to jobs. Always tell them, your interview starts the moment they contact you. It's, how are you making sure that you're courteous, that you're showing your values, that you're, not ignoring the person that's at the front desk, that, all of those different things are important. And it's not just how are you in the interview in front of the decision maker, but all those other pieces as well. I was going to tell a quick story about interviewing, which was I've been helping do some interviews for other Pax8 positions, Pax8 Academy positions. And recently, Ken Sponsler, he's the director of coaching with Pax8 Academy, and I were doing some interviews together. And so we split it up. I did the first half of the interview, and Ken did the second half of the interview. My questions I prepared were really job specific. Tell me examples of when you collaborated and how, if you're going to teach me something, what are the steps that you would take to teach me, things of that nature. Ken has a list of questions that are some really fun questions and feel like you might be a little put off by them, but they're all in a row. So it really helps someone get to know you. He starts it off saying, this is not necessarily about work. It's I want to get to know you. Chris, have you heard of any of these questions before?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about? You want to share what some of those are? There's like around like, what would your superpower be? And
what superhero are you?
Yeah. And he would ask,
it's great because he's got he knows what he's looking for. A purpose-filled question. It sounds fairly innocent and kind of what you're talking about, but it really gets, the answer can be very telling if you know what you're looking for. Right, Bessie? That's kind of what he does.
Yeah, exactly. It's really fun. Their questions are like, how weird would you rate yourself? And like, if you could go anywhere and be invisible for the day, like where would you go?
Don't give Zac any more ideas.
But it's a lot of fun.
I love that.
Yeah, it helps you, and it's not. They're not so. Our producer was telling us she was asked a question: "What sandwich would you make me?" And that doesn't really tell you about anything. It's very. I would be worried about working somewhere that wants me to just make them sandwiches. It's more questions to get to know you as a person.
I'm worried about a producer's answer to that question in the interview.
Yeah, would you want to say what it was?
No, well, you know what? We need to bring Jen onto the show sometime, and we'll ask that question.
She'll answer.
She needs to be.
She was like, "No."
Camera. Absolutely. But Zac, I know we've talked about this, and I think I've expressed a big interest in a fan of Patrick Lencioni. I know you are as well. And talk to us about the hungry, humble, smart, because I think that is such an important component. I love the way he puts that and how valuable that is. Do you mind talking to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things that if you ask any employer, hey, would you want any of your candidates to have these three characteristics? Everybody's going to say yes, right? Nobody's going to say no. Maybe if they're hiring for a salesperson, like, no, I need this dude to be arrogant or this person to be arrogant. I need them to know it all. Like, maybe there are. Okay, I don't know. But for most of us, we're looking for humble, hungry, smart, and they all complement each other. They all work together. Is there such thing as too humble? Probably. I don't know anyone who's too humble. That combined with a hunger to work, and work is really, I'm not going to expect someone else to spoon feed me everything. I'm going to take the initiative and at least ask. And then the smart is, how do I put it all together? How do I put together the soft skills, the technical skills? How do I ask good questions? If you want to know what my superpower is, often it's that I've spent 20 years learning to ask good questions. It is a skill that I did not have, that I had to study and to learn, because asking good questions can uncover so many good things, and it can make you sound really smart when you're not. That's really sort of the beauty of this. And so the humble, hungry, smart are one of those things that we don't often think of when we're going into a job interview, both as the person who's interviewing and the person being interviewed. But when those elements are there, it's kind of one of those things where somebody goes, man, I don't know what it was, but they've just got it. 9 times out of 10, it's one or more of those. The humility was there, the hunger, they were smart. And when all three come into play, that's when I feel like we get people who we go, man, like that person's got it. And we have a hard time putting a finger on what it is. But that book and The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, another book that he has, are both great in understanding what makes someone successful individually and what makes a team successful. And you put those together, and you've got a recipe for, what can really build a culture at an organization, especially when you talk about hiring and bringing new people in.
Very much so. Thank you.
I love that, Zach. We're gonna come back in just a quick minute, but first we're gonna hear from Pax8 around what we've been learning recently about hiring from our talent acquisition team. So let's play that video.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mark McCauley. I'm the Vice President of Talent Acquisition at Pax8 for the Americas. So it's a new year, and that means new hires. I'm excited to talk about some of the hiring trends that are both here at Pax8 and at the industry, some changes we've seen, and what we really can expect for the future. First off, I'd love to talk about what we look for here at Pax8, really focusing on 3 important skills or qualities that we really look for. First one really is adaptability and learning agility. Being able to demonstrate the ability to learn quickly and adapt to changing circumstances is an invaluable skill here. The second one would be culture add and emotional intelligence, being able to integrate and add to the company values, demonstrating self-awareness, empathy, humility, and interpersonal skills. And the third one would really be technical skills and continuous learning. Our technology and methodologies are constantly evolving, and we need people who love to stay updated with their skills. Those are some of the big 3 that we tend to look for. Obviously, there will be others that each role will have that will be a little bit more specific to them, but those are really some common ones that we really look for. A little bit more about Pax8. We've really kind of turned a corner in the channel market from an employer perspective and really accelerated us being an employer of choice. Last year, we had over 111,000 people apply to 500 roles. That is an incredible volume that we're going through, and we're excited to have that many people interested in the company. What that means is, from your perspective, candidate perspective, you really need to effectively showcase your skills on that resume. That can really help you stand out among that larger pool of applicants. Highlight your relevant skills and experience. Provide some specific examples on how these skills were applied and quantify the impact that they had. We've had some changes in our hiring process in the last few years, and these things will really help you stand out among the crowd again. There's now a stronger emphasis on recognizing the value of diverse perspective and experiences. And so we want more people to come in to think differently and think from outside of those boxes and those different ways of looking at things. And I think one of the other big things that we're looking at is we've adopted this remote and hybrid work models. They have exceptionally expanded our pool of talent geographically and really changed how we assess candidates' abilities to work independently and collaborate virtually. Now, getting a little bit away from what Pax8 specifically and looking at some of the industry trends, I think what you're going to see is a greater emphasis on employee experience, starting with the interview process. I think you're going to see greater transparency, and I think you're going to see stronger employer branding. What I'm also seeing is kind of this larger trend towards skills-based hiring rather than credential-based approaches. And I think this will allow companies to tap into a wider, more diverse pool of talent. We're seeing this already with many companies removing their education requirements within their job descriptions. And then one of the kind of final big pieces I think we're really going to see, and I think we're all hearing it, I think you're going to see an expansion of AI in the talent acquisition space. It's going to become more sophisticated from both the candidate side and the business side. From a candidate perspective, it's going to be much easier for you to make your resume more relevant and really stand out. From the business side, we're going to see better analytics, and we're going to see much, much stronger support helping us select high-value candidates. The last thing, hiring is constantly evolving here at Pax8, and we're really committed to staying ahead of the curve and really ensuring that we're attracting and retaining the best talent. We're excited, and we're looking forward and hoping y'all apply.
Well, I loved that video. I'm so glad we have so many partners at Pax8 and other departments besides Academy that are willing to share their knowledge with us about the hiring landscape. I know one statistic that really stood out to me from that video was around there's 111,000, something like that, he said, applicants for only 500 positions. I was amazed at how many people apply to jobs. I know, Chris, you've posted a position recently. How is that process? How is it to get those applicants and so many and we'd figure out who's going to get an interview? Was that difficult?
Man. Oh, well, I'm going to pull Zac into the answer to this question because I think he knows, that process as an MSP can be very painful. These conversations come up in peer group, and I'm going to post it to Zac in a second. But to answer you, I think we're very fortunate, blessed. I think Pax8, and the partners I think that have, that we've seen in peer groups that succeed in this to do well, have a very strong identity, meaning they have their values, their culture, their mission and vision very clear. I think that helps the process a lot in attracting the right candidate. But as far as the process and the steps moving forward, I think that, for the growth and everything that we've experienced, they do just an absolutely amazing job of vetting through and getting through a very streamlined process to get the right candidates to the interviews. I was fortunate. I only had a small handful of interviews, really, and we had a very clear process of who's interviewing, what kind of questions are they asking, what's the next decision. So, Zac, kind of to you on that, talk to us a little bit about your process and what you've learned about posting a job, taking in candidates, vetting them out, and getting through a process that is streamlined and is a good experience for them and you.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges, as I listen to those numbers that Bessie was talking about, I want to be candidate number 2 in that resume pile, not candidate number 110,998, right? Because by the time you get to there, that person's exhausted looking. So like for us, I always try to give the same level of energy and focus the first candidate to the last one, because for them, I'm their first interaction with us, but for me, it may be my 30th, and I may just be tired, but I have to remember, I'm trying to give this person some acknowledgement that they took time out of their day, whether it's a phone interview, a Zoom interview, something else to meet with us. And so our process has changed where right now, typically the first thing is if we see something that we like, we schedule a short 15-minute interview. It could be phone, it could be Zoom. Most of the time, that's going to tell us if there's something there that we like enough to move on to an in-person interview. And it's easier for them and it's easier for us. And that's what we're looking for is how did they handle the conversation? Did they say a lot? And did they, I always look for, did they answer the question that I asked them? Because if they cannot answer the question that I asked them, it's probably not going. And it seems like such a simple thing, but if I say, tell me how you did this, and they don't answer that, that's kind of a big problem. And so we've chopped it up where it used to be that we would just schedule people for in person. Now there's unfortunately for job candidates, there's more layers to go through, but we try to get through them quicker and try to give that feedback quicker so that if it's a no, we're not holding them up from, looking somewhere else. But really, it's just about understanding how do we quickly identify things that we like that will carry that candidate to the next stage of the process.
Yeah.
I love that you said that about the timeline, because that's something that I was so impressed with at Pax8 when I applied is a year and a half ago. But from the time I applied until the time I accepted the offer was, I think, 3 weeks or something like that. It was very, very quick. And that's not the standard. That's not something that everyone now has to go do. But I loved the speed because it made me feel like they're interested in me and I was interested in them. And we were able to move the process along quickly. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, Zac.
And I think too, Zac, you would agree. I think this too is it's a two-way thing, right? You're not just interviewing if they're a fit. You're giving them the opportunity to see if your company is a fit too, right? And we've talked about this. That's just as important. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. I want, and that's, like we said, that's one of the things that demonstrates if they actually have an interest. I've interviewed a lot of people who, when there's dead space, they did not ask any questions. I was the one carrying most of that conversation. And so it is a two-way street because I want them to know, what's it like to work here? What's it like to work for Green Bean IT? What's it like to work with me? I mean, Chris would tell you it's wonderful, right? It's like, it's the most it's like winning the lottery every day and getting rainbows and kittens, at lunchtime. I mean, how do you compete with that? Yeah, and Skittles, right? You can't forget the Skittles, sour Skittles. So I want to be as honest with them as they are with me. And if we've told people, look, this is a new position. We don't have it all figured out. And so I need you to know that part of this is going to be, we're discovering this together about what's really entailed. But here's what I can tell you based on this person does a third of this job and this person does a third of this job. And now we're trying to combine this into one. Here's what we know. Here's what we can imagine. Some people have never worked for a small organization before. It's different than working for a large organization, right? There are certain things that are in place in large groups. There's some things that we just kind of fly by the seat of our pants. And I want somebody to know that, because some people love structure and they need that. And sometimes I can't give that to them. And I want them to know that this is not always going to be the same thing every single day. So I want to be honest with them when they ask, some of these questions. But like kind of Chris mentioned earlier, I'm kind of trying to sell them on us, because if I like them, man, I'm going to really try to sell us as a great place for them to work. And so that's where really just them being able to demonstrate some level of interest in us and what we're doing goes a long way, because then I go, oh, okay, they're engaged. They care. They actually care about trying to get this position. That goes so far.
Love that.
Go ahead, but
I was just going to say, there's a few other things that Mark brought up that I wanted us to discuss. One of them was around the less and less importance on credentials and education. Is that something that you're considering in your business, or is that something you've always considered? How important is education right now for applicants?
Yeah, so I think some is important. What it tells me is that they could finish something or stay with it long enough to get to the end. That's it. I mean, I know really smart people whose degree is in nothing like what they're doing now. So it's less important for me. It just says they finished it. I'm a good test taker. I have a very good short-term memory, and I can look at the answers on the test. So I could probably go and take a test for some position, and I could pass or get something. It doesn't mean I know anything. And there are certain people who are not great test takers that really know their stuff. And so we're really looking for what kinds of things have they done. We've got one person who works with us who's been great. His background was in the wine and spirits industry. Doesn't have a direct correlation to technology, but you know what? He was responsible for when people came in, asking them questions about their event, their wedding, their party, to say how many people, because part of his job was trying to consult with them on what kind of wine and how much for that event. That's detail oriented. That's asking good questions. That's taking good notes, because that order has to be there when they come to pick it up for the party. Otherwise, he's now ruined someone's wedding or, occasion there. And so we're looking for that. I'm looking for what kind of things have they done in the past. Someone who's been a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home parent who's re-entering the workforce, I love that, because there's so many things that they've had to juggle and do that qualify them, even though on paper they didn't have the work skills. They've done it. And if they've done it, that's what I'm looking for, is what kind of experience did they get in their work or their career journey that is translatable to what we do? Because if I can get that, the technology stuff can come secondarily. We can teach that easier than I can teach somebody customer service.
Mm-hmm. So thinking of trends, the changes that, the COVID or all other factors of the last few years and technology changing fast, putting on, the seer hat or putting on a crystal ball, what are some other trends? Like when you think about your planning for 2024 and beyond 25, what are some things that come to your mind that you see as potential changes in your hiring, your job descriptions, or things like that? Anything bubble up to the top of the list of kind of where you see future trends going and what you're thinking about and focusing on for, next year, 2-3 years?
Yeah, I think that, one of the big things that lots of people are talking about right now is AI, right? We're sort of on the cusp of this thing, and there's a lot of jobs that are going to be affected by AI. And so we're looking at that saying, how do we as an organization remain relevant within what we're offering to our clients? And then how do the people that we're hiring, how will AI change their daily life and how will that translate into what's happening, at work? And so we're really looking for people who at their core are not afraid of new technology. They may not have already adopted it, but they aren't opposed to it. And if they can recognize, this is what they see changing sort of within their world. I mean, when you look at sort of what AI can do nowadays, it's kind of cool and it's really kind of scary. And so that's one thing specifically that we're just sort of looking at is, man, we don't know where this is going to go. So we want to try to be prepared. And it doesn't mean somebody has to know, if somebody walks in and says, hey, I've got 10 years of AI experience, I'm going to go BS. Really, nobody has that kind of, right? They're just sort of making it up. But if they say, hey, here's how I used AI for my resume, reviewing, for all these other things, I'm going to go, now that's interesting. So a candidate who can demonstrate to me that they have understood or seen trends and they're trying to, right, they've made some little effort to introduce that into the conversation, that's somebody where I go, now this is an interesting person and I want to know more about them and sort of what they bring to the table, because they've recognized that trend is now affecting every organization worldwide. And no matter where they go, that's a skill that they will probably need to have. And so that's just something simple that I think nowadays we're looking at as an organization who's hiring and candidates who are trying to find a job. It's a simple thing that they could do that I think could pay big dividends for them in the interview process.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Zac, yeah, that just makes sense. And I think that's something that Mark mentioned in that video too, about how the importance of AI on both sides. And I really love that approach, because some people, I'm sure, maybe in different industries are oh, if you've used AI to do this, I don't want you. But no, it's AI is going to become more and more a part of our life. So I really like the approach that you've got. And hopefully I'm not getting all choppy here. But question for you around networking and the importance of LinkedIn, going to networking events, anything around networking and hiring. Do you think it's important? Is it something that you've had a referral system in the past? Just tell me a little bit about the importance of networking or lack of importance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think networking has changed fundamentally, at least for the last 3.5, almost 4 years, because there's more virtual and remote jobs now. So, meeting somebody at a mixer in person used to be some of the main ways you do networking. Now there's more avenues for networking. And so I always like to say, try to find someone that you think is connected or in the industry or the type of organization that you want to work for, and offer to take them to lunch and pay for their lunch and say, can I take you to lunch and ask you questions? All I need you to do is answer my questions and you'll get a free lunch out of it. That can go so far, because sometimes meeting somebody at a networking event, you can't always ask them, or ask people that do you know someone who works in this type of industry? 9 times out of 10, you're going to find somebody who's going to go, yeah, I know so-and-so. And again, you want to be respectful of that person's time when it comes to what you're bringing to the table, which is kind of nothing, and what they might have, which is information around the industry or the job. And so recognizing that you want to make sure you're respecting their time to say, hey, I've been looking for 6 months. I have not been able to make any headway in this industry or this, whatever it is. Can you help me? I know there's been stories of people, on LinkedIn who said, I've been on 500 job interviews and haven't found anything. And then all of a sudden, sort of that went viral. It's really that human element of reaching out to another human and just saying, hey, I'm just struggling over here and I need some help. People respond so well to that, almost kind of like a cry for help there in a sense. And so the more that you can just introduce yourself to say, hey, I've worked in XYZ industries, I've done this, but I'm really looking to get into this. If you know anybody, please keep me in mind. Just simply framing that goes such a long way in networking, whether it's, in person or virtual or other things. You never know where that's going to come from. And so take that opportunity just to ask someone else, right? First, seek to understand, ask them about their job and their world. And eventually they'll ask you about yours, and then you can give your story about what you're looking for. But it's so key to use every opportunity you can just to that humble, hungry, smart. Hey, I'm humble. I can't find a job, but I'm hungry and I want it. And I'm trying to be smart about it and asking people questions. That to me will help you have the best chance of opening up doors through networking than anything else will.
And
you
mentioned,
I recommend to students all the time that are, I'm doing a mentorship program right now and helping students that are transitioning to becoming full-time employees in the future. And I always recommend that they reach out to find ask around, do informational interviews. Last question is always, is there anyone else you recommend I tap into their network? Then you can start by having no one and build up that way. So thank you for sharing that. Chris, what were you going to say?
Well, I think the constant hiring thing, like always having feelers out. I think a lot of times business owners will get busy and it's kind of like it's a rush and a scramble to hire because it becomes urgent and it's so stressful, and they get people in, then you're done, and then now I got to build out business, and then you build business, and then you get more than you need, and I think it creates this. Whereas I think having that constant conversations, constantly looking at the pool, I think is huge. I like that, and I think it would be a recommendation for even small businesses that maybe don't hire a lot. Just stay connected with the talent pool around them and people and the available resources. You never know, and having those conversations, I think, is huge. The question I have, let's pivot a little bit to where the world's changed and remote workforce. Remote work, hybrid schedules, office, things like that. Talk to us a little bit about what's the current state, in your business. What are you experiencing, and where does that affect and impact your jobs you're offering for the hiring process, et cetera, all around remote, hybrid schedules, office?
Yeah, I mean, I think for most organizations, right, there's at least some acceptance around remote hybrid work is here to stay. And going back to something you were saying earlier, Chris, about culture, right? How does a remote worker affect positively, negatively, right? The culture, the mission, and the values that we have there. And so there's, remote hiring and remote work doesn't solve every problem, right? In my opinion, it creates as many problems as it solves. It can work. You have to be creative. And so, one of the things that we've done is we really rely on a lot of our other members in our peer group at Pax8 to say, tell me how this has worked and tell me how it hasn't worked for you. And we glean from them to find out what is working for them when it comes to team dynamics, when you may have somebody on the West Coast, somebody on the East Coast, different time zones and other things there. And so we really we don't want to be at the mercy of our own best thinking, right? That doesn't need to be the pinnacle. We want to be at the mercy of the team that's around us. And so really, like, we have conversations with our team around, this is what is a challenge with remote work is if you're not at your desk at work, I can know you're in a couple of places I can find you. If you're not at your desk at home, I don't know where you're at. And when I'm trying to get a hold of you, that can be challenging. It's really understanding your team, your culture, how you work together, and what are the ways, whether it's Teams or Zoom or something else, to bring people together virtually when they can't be together physically. You have to be able to address those challenges because you may be in a small town in Nebraska, but if you can hire a rock star out of Orlando, Florida, you have to really be ready to do that because you may be geographically limited by the talent there. And that's what this has opened up to us, is there are so much more talent now available to us. We can't just stick our head in the sand and say, nope, it's not going to work. And I don't like it. We have to say, how can I make it work if I really want to? And if I wasn't, going to be stubborn about it, can I ask someone for help to say, tell me how this is working? Because I think it's a dumb idea, but maybe I'm wrong, right? And that opens up the conversation for other people to tell you how they've made it work. Then you can really understand, oh, this is really possible. Okay, if we wanted to make it work, we'll find a way. If we don't, we're just gonna, be negative Nancy and Debbie Downer of the old Saturday Night Live reference. Just every single thing is just gonna be, nope, that's terrible. It won't work for us. Well, with that attitude, right, it's not going to. So I think we have to understand it's here. It's not going anywhere. How do we embrace it? How do we make it work? And what are the challenges? So that way, when we're going into it, we're not expecting this, utopia when, somebody doesn't sign on when they're supposed to. And now you have a different logistical challenge because they're not physically there.
Yeah. And it's expected, right? Like you said, it's here, head in the sand. Is it going to work with that? And just how do we adapt? So good.
Getting end of our hour there. Do you mind sharing is there any last piece, is there any chance to talk about that you would like to share?
You were breaking up there for a second, and I don't want to pretend like I heard all of your question because I may go off in a direction. So do you mind repeating the question for me?
Yeah. See, Zac, way to go. Way to reinforce your message. You know, the things you were talking about all show, reinforce it. Tell the truth, be upfront, be honest, show the good values. Just wanted to give you an opportunity. Is there anything that we didn't ask about that you'd love to share, or any, thing you'd like to talk about?
Wow. Nobody gets this right the first time. Nobody. I remember some of my first interviews. I remember some of the first people that I hired and how bad those were. And so just understand that some of the things that I'm sharing have come through 20 years of doing it wrong, of trials, of pain, of frustration, of going, well, I'm not going to make that mistake again. Nobody's getting this right 100% of the time. And sometimes there's a great interviewee who says all the right things, and then the person who shows up is not the person that you interviewed or you thought you were hiring. That's okay, right? Hire slowly, fire quickly is a sort of a phrase that I've heard other people say. It's going to take some time, but there are so many good resources out there and other people that you can ask that, maybe are in HR, is remove the expectation that you're going to get your hiring right 100% of the time. You're not, right? Because we're not hiring robots, we're hiring people. Some people are great at interviewing and they know all the right things to say. So take that off of your plate and just say, I'm going to try to get to know these people. I'm going to try to do the best that I can. If it doesn't work out, I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to do better next time. When you can take that approach with your hiring, it's going to serve you a whole lot better than, somebody like me who tends to put a lot of pressure on ourselves to get it right the first time. It's not going to happen. Learn, improve, move on, and, use resources around you and other people when you can.
Well stated. We talk about how to get to the 100th time when you're doing it good, you've got to do it 99 times first, and you have to learn. And I love you sharing that, willingness to learn. Zac, thank you for being on the show. Really appreciate your time. Thank you. Oh, okay. Zac, sorry. You threw a shout out to Ruthie.
I've been usurped.
I've got my granddaughter here, so that trumps you. So nice seeing you, but later. Hey. Hi, Hadley. All right. So special guest appearance. This is my granddaughter, Hadley. So she's going to help me close the show out and bring us to the wrap up. So final thoughts, right, Hadley? We're going to do final thoughts.
Did you final thoughts?
So this is such a relevant topic. We've heard in peer groups for a very long time, in our industry, there's skills gaps, there's challenges with hiring, there's challenges with having good people, and taking some of the lessons from Zac and the things we've talked about on the show. Be prepared. Have a good job description. Have your value, culture, mission set up and aligned is so important, right? It is so important. Yes, you know that. We're very thankful to have Zac on the show. Really appreciate him. I also want to share this with you. LinkedIn reported that 85% of workers fear being laid off in 2024. How does that impact you and your hiring in your business? That's pretty huge to think that that's the environment out there. It's a high number. So we hope you're looking for work, you found the episode helpful, and good luck on your job search. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate you being here. Be sure to check us out next week. We'll be talking to Pax8 Jay Hokie about setting smart goals. Remember, we're live every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Mountain and on demand always. So be sure to like and subscribe down below. And be sure to ask yourself, what are you going to do differently tomorrow to improve your business? Take care, everybody.
Bye.